G'day everyone, welcome back to another video on the channel. So today I'm going to be going over my finals predictions for the 2024 upcoming finals series. Currently is the pre-finals bye, so I thought to pass the time like we have been doing the past couple of years, let's go over and give my early thoughts on how I think the finals will shape. Really keen to see how this September will shape up, of course. Usually every year there are the teams that we feel like, yep, they're a shoo-in for the flag or they're a premiership contender, like Geelong in 2022 and Collingwood last year and a bit of Melbourne Geelong in 2021. But this year, you look at all 8 teams, I think it's a wide open race. Genuinely, anyone can win this inside the 8. So yeah, let's have a crack and have a chat about how I think the matches will shape up. Okay, everybody, here we are on the trusty old squiggle, as we always like to say when doing these prediction videos. So yeah, first week does look very tasty. We'll do this actually in chronological order. So the first game up is Port Adelaide versus the Cats. It was announced earlier today at the time, so Port and the Cats face off on the Thursday night. And this is another Port Adelaide Geelong matchup. I swear these two sides always seem to face off. I did see, I think since 2004, there's been 3 or 4 qualifying final matchups in finals between these two teams. Ever since that loss to the Suns up in the Gold Coast, there's been a lot of doubters, including myself, to be honest, on can Port even make the 8. And credit to Ken Hinkley and certainly his playing group. They've been heavily invested and they've played a much better brand of football and won practically every single game ever since that loss, and now in a top 2 battle. And as for the Cats, they just continue to prove the doubters wrong as well. A lot of them had them outside the top 8 again this season, and a big part on how they've been able to finish off the year pretty well is I think their midfield has heavily improved. Paddy Dangerfield's been key to that. They've been a much better centre bounce side. Across the span of this year, the Cats have been the #1 team in the competition when they don't have the footy. So this is the Geelong we all know. When they don't have the pill, they just set up so well around the ground. Even though those midfield numbers have improved for the Cats, the real question is it going to stand up in a final, especially facing a ferocious Port Adelaide outfit at home too. You look at Horne-Francis and Butters and Rosie too. They've just got so many of those game changers where they can really outdo opposition sides. Defensively, they've looked a lot more stronger the past 6 weeks. Port Adelaide, which probably was one of their weaknesses at this point last year, hence why they did go out in straight sets. They look a lot more of a tougher team too. And look, the Cats, they just always seem to prove people wrong. I think they'll really push them here, but I just think Port Adelaide, with the form they're in, at home too, I think they'll put a number here on the Cats and they'll move to home prelim. So we'll go Port with this one over the Cats. Margin, probably something around 3 goals, I'd say, but watch out for the rested stars of the Cats with Dangerfield and Cameron. You can't let them off the leash, but I think Port win this one. Okay, next game, Friday night, Dogs and Hawks. Geez, this one's going to be a ripper. Elimination final, and to be frank, these two sides, the Dogs and the Hawks, are probably the most informed teams since the bye in the competition, and two sides that are ultimate dark horses in this final series for sure. Hawthorn, though, I mean, what an unbelievable turnaround it's been. Started off 0-5, and their last 10 games, they've won 8 matches, and 2 of those games they dropped, they were leading against Port Adelaide and GW at three-quarter time by convincing margins, and they probably should have put in those games to bed. So they could have quite literally had a 10-0 record with their last 10 games. Dogs also start off the year a little bit hot and cold, but since the bye, they've also been able to, build a really strong profile. And we all know with the Western Bulldogs, such a talented team. And I think now looking at them in the back half of the year, we've seen Sam Darcy start to blossom a lot more now. 𝐓𝐴𝐺 and Norton take those important marks forward of the ball. And just looking at those key position plays inside their forward 50, that could just be such a key factor if the Dogs are going to be a success in September, especially when facing Hawthorn's undersized backline. That's probably one of the more bigger issues if we're trying to pick out a negative. And defensively too, their intercepting game has been a massive improvement. Roy Lobb, since he's moved back there, I think he's been a top 10 interceptor in the competition. He's been key to their success, and Liam Jones has also escaped suspension. So I think with his presence, he's genuinely the difference between a win or a loss if he's in or out of the team. On paper, the Dogs do look better than the Hawks, no doubt about that. I think you look at Bontempelli, Treloar, and also Richards, who's been able to carve up his opposition midfielders too with his foot skills, and Liberatore too. Just that experienced midfield group having another finals series. It's certainly an advantage over the Hawks' young midfield and young team in general. But what has been the difference for Hawthorn is they're just a side that can take on anybody. They're a confident young team. They're a side that has very high morale. Look how they've been playing the back half of the year. They've been able to go to anywhere and play any opponent and absolutely smash it and play consistent football. Their run and gun game is so fun to watch. Their ground level game has been excellent pretty much since round 10, I'd say. And on the big ground of the MCG, their game style could really outrun the Bulldogs. If they really turn it into a free-flowing game and not allowed to have a lot of stoppages where the Dogs are pretty strong at themselves, they're probably one of the better teams in the comp, the Dogs, and being able to get the ball from inside to out and use it well forward to centre. So yeah, if the Hawks can really move the footy well and not allow too many stoppages, well, that could be the difference for the Hawks if they are to win this game. This is just such a tough one. To be fair, I don't mind the idea of whoever wins this game could genuinely push on to a prelim and perhaps the grand final. It's a tricky one. This one could go either way. I'd love to tip either side here, but I just think with those key forwards the Dogs have and just that experienced midfield group, there still are doubts about how Hawthorn will go in a final series given how young they are too. They remind me of the Swans of 2021 a bit, Hawthorn. They have a big breakout year. They might win a final or two, but in terms of the grand prize of a premiership, I think they probably fall short this year. So I'll go the Dogs for now on this one. Just liking their profile and just a better side on paper. So I'll tip the Dogs in this one in what should be a classic of an elimination final. Next qualifying final, we have the Swans taking on the Giants on Saturday afternoon. Another Sydney Derby finals game. And gee, the Giants do have the wood over the Swannies in these finals games. They've played against each other 3 times and the Giants have picked up all 3 games with big fat wins. And I did see as well the Giants have never lost a single first week finals game in their history. So the numbers are in their favour here. However, if we look at it from more of a this year point of view, the Swans have convincingly beaten GWS pretty much in both of their games. And even the last few years, the Swans have been probably the better side with this matchup. The only time the Giants have beaten the Swans the past couple of years have been under a goal. So there's just a few head-to-head facts for you right there off the top of my head. That could probably give you a bit of assistance on who to tip here. But yeah, it's going to be a ripper for sure. I think Sydney, they have been able to get a bit of their mojo back. That was a big issue when they lost to the Bulldogs and also Port Adelaide. They've just completely forgotten how to play footy. But the last few games, their turnover game and their ball movement has been excellent. Turnover game has been a big positive sign this year in general for the Swans. So that's definitely one of the more important factors in finals. If you can really get that turnover game and high pressure game going, it can win you finals for sure. And both these teams, pressure games, elite. To the Giants, I think throughout stages of the second half of the year, their pressure game was #1 in the competition. And we all know when Sydney get their pressure game up, they are a very hard side to beat. Swans also get back in some quality players too. Tommy Papley will return. Tom McCartan will come back. Heaney will also come back. And Justin McInerney is most likely going to play too. Did see also the Giants are apparently in doubt of getting Toby Bedford back in time for this game. When looking at both teams' contested games, that's probably been some of their weaknesses. The Giants have been able to win a lot of their games off accuracy and ball movement. But some of their contested stuff it's been around the bottom sort of 6 range, and Sydney's contested possession differentials the last few weeks has been not very good too. I think that's been bottom 3. So the contested game, heavily important finals. This game can simply go either way. The Giants are probably one of the more mentally tougher teams in the competition. Look what they did last year. They can win at any venue, of course, we all know. And if they really get that pressure game going and shut down the corridor, like teams have been able to do against the Swans, and allow them to move the ball freely, there's certainly a strong chance here and definitely a team worthy of tipping. But I just think Sydney heading into this one with a bit of momentum. The Giants have been, I think, a little bit vulnerable the past few weeks. They'll get back in some players, of course, to Sydney. And they just have the Giants measure, I feel. Just with these 2 games I've watched this year against GWS, they've been able to take away their strengths and really outdo them in the midfield. And I think with a big crowd at the SCG, that's going to really rally up the Swans. So, yeah, I'll lean towards the Swans with this game. But it's going to be a beauty. And I'll go Swans. Yeah, in a pretty cagey affair, but I think they'll run away with it late and they'll move to a home prelim. And then the final game of week 1, the next elimination final, we have Brisbane taking on the Blues at the Gabba. I think this one is on the Saturday night. And, what A crazy Sunday it was for Blue supporters, losing a heartbreaker where, as a neutral, I couldn't believe how they lost that game. Jack Higgins, though, what a goal that was. But thanks to Port Adelaide, they were able to maintain their spot in the top 8. And yeah, they head up to Brisbane once again. They did, of course, knock off the Lions up there at the Gabba back in opening round. And what's one of those classic sayings, beware of the wounded dog. I think a lot of people, and it's definitely justified, this could definitely be a game where Brisbane, with their strengths and back at home too, they could win this one convincingly, to be fair. But beware of the wounded dog. They'll get back in some important plays. 𝐓𝐿𝐴𝐶𝐞 𝐎𝐿𝐬, I think 𝐻era's also going to come back in too. Apparently Sam Doherty's been training really well. He's also a chance to come back. So it's almost like we're going to be seeing Carlton in this final series, unlike the last 2 weeks, as a completely new team. And let's be honest, in general this year, I think the Blues still deserve to play finals, because they were sitting in the top 4 not so long ago, a month or 2 ago. And when they do get the game on their terms, they can just be so damaging, especially off stoppage. Paddy Cripps has been excellent. He's basically been carrying the team on his back, especially the past fortnight with the outs for the Blues. But moving on to Brisbane, for sure, they'll definitely be the warm favourites here. They did shoot themselves in the foot, though, with a disappointing past few losses where they had control over the Giants, and Collingwood probably should have put in those games to bed, and that in the end cost them a top 4 chance. But they're also a definitely high chance too on pushing all the way to a grand final. But is it a bridge too far? Very difficult to win it outside the top 4, especially if you are an interstate team. Since the bye, the Lions form and also the numbers has been definitely some of the best in the AFL. They've really been able to be such a damaging side off turnover and also off clearance. Their ability to move the footy arc to arc is some of the strongest stuff in the competition out of any side, I'd say, especially at home at the Gabba. They can really turn it on. However, a bit of an issue for the Lions the past few games has certainly been their accuracy, and they did show it on a few footy shows. When you do have a look and a replay at the replays of Brisbane going inside 50, they do really look a bit ugly. They try and go deep to one-on-ones instead of hitting short targets. So something definitely they've got to eaten up, their use inside 50 and also their accuracy for goal if they do want to be a chance in September. So as I said before, beware of the wounded dog. I think Carlton, with a pretty much completely new side with those players coming back in, could definitely push the Lions here. But just watching Brisbane in general since the bye, they've just been one of the more stronger teams in the competition on being able to control the football well. And I think if they not allow this game to turn into a bit of a scrap, when you get into a bit of a free-flowing game, especially against Carlton, that can definitely be a bit of a weakness for them too. A side with more finals experience, and they just have so many damaging players for the ball who, yeah, are going to really turn it up, I think, in front of a big home crowd. So I think the Blues will be gallant here, but yeah, the Lions, just with their class, should be a bridge too far here for Carlton to, yeah, stir an upset in my eyes. So I go the Lions here to nudge out the Blues, and they'll move to a semi-final. Okay, across now to week number 2. We'll go through these games a little bit more quicker, given that these games are just total hypotheticals. They may or may not even happen whilst the week 1 games are actually in full certainty. First semi-final, we have the Giants against the Lions. This one will be obviously at Spotless or Giant Stadiums or NG Stadium, whatever they call it these days. But yeah, GWS versus Brisbane. This is an interesting matchup. The Giants have taken the win over the Lions twice this season. One of the big issues when Brisbane lost against GWS was just their inability to defend the Giants' ball movement. Like, they were just able to carve them up through the middle of the ground, and that has been a bit of a problem for the Lions, I think, this year. Defensive transition's probably been one of their main weaknesses. Brisbane at their best, they still, I think, could be a smoky for the grand final. But as I say again, when you're outside the top 4, you just have doubts. And I think the Blues are going to really push them, so that could exhaust them a little bit. Brisbane would have to really dominate the clearances. They are one of the more prolific clearance sides when Neil and Dunkley get their hands on it. But if they have players like Toby Bedford shutting down the likes of Lachie Neale in the matchup earlier this season, that could be a key to this game. This is a tough one, but I just think the Giants, I can't see them going out in straight sets. I just think them at their damaging best, it matches up in finals. Look what they did last year. I think their ball movement's elite, and it's going to outdo the Lions here. So we'll go GWS in this hypothetical semi-final, and they'll move on to take on the pair in the prelim. Next semi-final, we have the Cats and the Bulldogs. This one would be at the MCG. Given the MCG hosting rules, there needs to be at least one final at the MCG if there are Melbourne teams involved. Big question is, would the Cats go out in straight sets? I think the majority of the fans would probably say yes, given they are one of the more vulnerable teams for sure in the top 4. Questions on is their midfield good enough to go far? They can be exposed a little bit as well in transition. And when you do look at this matchup, look what happened a few weeks ago. The Dogs absolutely pounded the Cats, especially in the midfield. They smacked them at clearance, and their tools really got a hold of the Cats at either end of the ground. Being in the MCG, I think if the Cats are able to control the football well, like I remember they win against the Pies, just smart, methodical ball movement. I think that's how you got to do it against a strong midfield group like the Bulldogs. Can't let it turn into a scrap. Get the game on your own terms, because the Cats are very good at that. Wouldn't shock me at all if the Cats can pick up a finals win here, but just looking at this matchup right here, right now, I think the Dogs are coming into this final series with a bit of momentum, and they've just got so many options that just make you frightened a wee bit if you're an opposition supporter, with that tall forward line and also that midfield group that could really get the ball rolling in September. So I think the Dogs will knock out the Cats here in this semi-final. So this is what the prelims look like. The Swans taking on the Dogs at the SCG, and Port Adelaide taking on GWS at Adelaide Oval. We'll start with prelim final number 2, Port and GWS. Well, Port Adelaide, can they finally do it? Can they finally make a grand final with Ken Hinkley? This is the best year for these interstate sides to succeed. A lot of people have said this throughout the weeks of this season. It's a big opportunity, but as I said before, GWS, they're just so good away from home. They can win absolutely everywhere. Their pressure game is some of the best stuff in the competition. Pressure, pressure, pressure. One of the key elements in finals, and if the Giants can really get that going, put a few of those Port midfielders under the pump. We've seen it in finals games before with Port. Brosine, Butters can sometimes be a little bit soft to the footy, so if they can win that important ball, the Giants, and really get their classy stuff going with their ball movement and the dominance in the air with Jessie Hogan, I think the Giants are genuinely a chance to win this game. You probably could say since the bye, this is the strongest Port Adelaide have looked since 2020 and also 2021 with how they have played. Midfield matchup would be a big one here if both these sides did face off though, and as we have said, Port just, I feel like, have that edge, especially at home when you look at Horne-Francis and also Butters with their impact. Giants also been a bit vulnerable with the numbers with their contested stuff and also defensively too. So I feel like I want to tip Port Adelaide here, but something is just telling me the Giants, I think, could make the grand final here. So I think Port, with this matchup here, should win. But I think they're going to fall short again. I just think the Giants, they can win anywhere away from home. And I think when the moments really matter, their contest stuff really sharpens up. And I think heading into this final series, they know they've got to get better. And I think at their best, they can go all the way to a grand final. So I might go the Giants here. They'll make the granny. And then prelim final number 2, the Swans and the Bulldogs, they meet again. Both these sides do not like each other come finals. Of course, the 2016 grand final. When we look at all the teams, I still think Sydney's best is the best in the competition with how they play, especially come finals with that ball movement and also that electric turnover game. But the key thing for the Bulldogs, if they want to win this game, do what you did last time when you knocked off the Swannies in a convincing fashion. Take away their ball movement, take away the corridor, really get the pressure ramping up and get a lot of that grand ball stuff and first possession stuff in and under. That's what absolutely obliterated the Swannies when they did verse off each other a few weeks ago. But comparing from that game until now, it would look like a bit more of a different Swannies outfit with those important plays back in. So if the Swans are able to really produce their best and get enough out of those stars, I think they'll win this game. But I just think with the Dogs' ability to negate opposition's strengths with that strong midfield and, again, the tall forwards and defensively and also for the ball is in check, I think I might go with the Dogs here. They'll pip the Swans in a thriller. Something's just telling me the Dogs, I think, can genuinely go all the way to a granny. Early thoughts with these finals predictions. I just think the Dogs can really smash in September. So I think it'll be a Dogs and Giants granny. And look, we probably don't have to talk too much about the grand final here, given it's a hypothetical. Who does win it? I think the Dogs at the MCG. Look what happened in 2016 too when they played interstate side. They really just played an unbelievable brand of footy. They were hard at it. I mean, it was 8 years ago now, so a lot has changed. Oh, it's a tricky one, but I think the Giants can win the flag. As I said with that prelim final tip, their contested game and the defensively, they look a little bit vulnerable, but I think they'll improve those deficiencies as September gets on if they are able to win. They were also close last year, and I just think their brand is some of the best in the common there. As I said, I think it was the qualifying final tip. They are just such a mentally tough side. So I think the Giants can go the way and knock off the Dogs. So yeah, early thoughts. I think the Giants will win the flag for the 2024 Finals Series. As always, lads, love to hear your predictions and your thoughts down below in the comments section. Get involved. It's a pre-finals bye, so everyone's going to have different opinions and different brackets on how things will turn out. It could really, you never know. It could be the most unusual team winning the premiership. Wide open race. I'm really keen to see how September goes. Obviously, as a Sydney supporter, I love to see my boys go all the way. So yeah, really excited. And yes, I'm going to be streaming every Finals Series game. So stay tuned on the channel. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did go on to enjoy. And until next time, I'll talk to you later. See you later, fellas.